Hello and welcome to the second part of integrating external tools in Sliver, the 21st video as part of our Red Team Fundamentals mini-series. In the previous video, we explored how to compile various third-party tools and execute them using the execute assembly command. However, it is important to note that execute assembly only works with .NET assemblies. In some cases, we may need to launch a standard unmanaged or native executable rather than a .NET assembly. In such situations, the execute assembly command will not work due to the way it loads its dependencies and the assembly itself. For these scenarios, we can use the sideload command, which this video will examine in detail. As always, everything we teach in this video is purely for educational purposes. We accept no responsibility for your actions. In our previous video, we discussed the fundamentals of the CLR and how the execute assembly command leverages it to load and run an assembly. However, because unmanaged Windows images do not rely upon the CLR as managed assemblies do, this process cannot be used to launch them. Instead, to load and run a native Windows image, such as a DLL or EXE, the sideload command can be used. Now, from Sliver's perspective, the sideload and the execute assembly commands work in very similar ways. Both use donut to convert the given image into shellcode and inject it into a processor's memory. However, since unmanaged code has no awareness of app domains as managed code does, we cannot leverage the CLR as we have done previously. Instead, the sideload command functions by utilizing Donut's custom PE loader, which replicates most of the fundamental functionality of Windows' own loader. Windows does not provide a direct API for executing PE images in memory, hence Donut has its own. Now, at a very high level, this process proceeds as follows. 1. It allocates a new read, write, and execute memory block to store the image. 2. It copies each section of the image into the newly allocated memory block. 3. It applies reallocations to adjust memory addresses at runtime, ensuring they match the location where the image was loaded in memory. 4. It initializes the import table, which contains references to external functions from modules that the program requires. 5. And finally, it executes the entry point. Now, much of how this is performed across DLLs and EXEs is similar, as both share the fundamental internal structure, that is, headers, sections, and so forth. In our case, as many of the tools we might use may be built on EXEs, we will examine the sideload command from a perspective of running executables. I suggest that you experiment with DLLs after this video. However, before we proceed, one important point to note is that the sideload command will always spawn a new sacrificial process into which it injects. And remember, you had an option whether you spawn a new process or inject into the current process when using the execute assembly command. And sideload does not support that. So just keep that in mind. Now, this can all be quite confusing to understand from a theoretical standpoint. So let's take a look at how this looks under the hood. Now, one thing to note is that we will be using Donut, and Donut relies on several Windows headers and dependencies that is provided through the desktop development with C++ workload. And once selected, you'll see here that it installs several different compilers, several different SDKs. And before you use Donut and compile it on a Windows workstation, just ensure you have this workload enabled. Now, additionally, before we compile and use Donut, I have created an example program that we will use to basically see how Donut operates. And all that this program is a simple C++ program that utilizes the message box W function to launch a new Windows window dialog. So for this to make more sense, if we run the program, you'll see that upon executing, we get a nice little Windows box. And because this is a native Windows executable, we will shortly see how Donut's loader executes this in memory. Now, I won't go into Donut in detail. I suggest that you take some time to read about it in your own time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the GitHub's repository link, and then I'm going to open up the native tools command prompt for Visual Studio. And what this command prompt does is initialize several environment variables that make Visual Studio's compilers known to the current session. So for instance, if I was to execute CL, which is used for compiling C++ or C applications, you'll see that we can list its help menu. Okay, so I'm going to cd into my home path, source, repos directory, and then in here use git clone to clone Donut's repository. Now, once cloned, you'll notice that currently we are within the master branch, and this is the most stable branch to use whenever you are compiling position-independent code to use within assessments. But to kind of gain a better understanding of the tool, we will want to switch to the dev branch. And essentially, it just makes it easier to see what's happening than with pure shellcode. And to switch to the branch, we are going to use git checkout and then specify that branch's name, which is dev. Now, having switched branches, we are going to want to compile Donut. And to do so, we can use nmake. I'll specify the debug argument and the fswitch. And what nmake requires is a specific makefile. Now, Donut provides this in the form of makefile.msvc. And then nmake will look at this file, install any dependencies, and then compile the tool. Perfect. So having compiled this, we should have a file named donut.exe. And this file will be used to convert PE images into their shellcode equivalents. And then we should also have a file named loader.exe, which will be used to execute the generated shellcode in memory. Now, if you run Donut, you'll see that it has several different command line options, so you can really customize your shellcode as you please. However, as I said, I won't really go into Donut in detail in this video, and the only command line switch that we need is the I switch. And this switch will be used to provide an input file to generate that shellcode. Now, in our case, that input file will be the message box application we compiled earlier. And then once executed, you'll see that Donut proceeds to compile it into its shellcode equivalent, performs all the necessary steps it needs to perform. And then you'll see some output of the configurations Donut used to compile our image into its shellcode equivalent. And then you'll also see that we get the .bin file named loader that contains the shellcode of our application. Now, as part of this compilation, Donut has also generated a file named instance. And all that this file contains is the loader specific configurations of the program for which we compiled into shellcode. Now, to execute this instance, we will use loader.exe and then specify that instance as an argument. And once executed here, you'll see that we get the message box that we observed earlier. Now, remember earlier I've said that Donut uses its own PE loader, which replicates most of the fundamental functionality of Windows's own loader to load a given assembly or file into system memory. And because Windows does not provide a direct API for executing images in memory, Donut has its own. So what Donut will perform first is allocate some memory, and this memory block will be used to store our image. And then scrolling down here, you'll see that it performs several other functionalities related to defense evasion, and then also it copies all of the sections of the image to memory. So you'll see here that it copies the .text section into memory, and this section contains the machine code instructions of the image that the CPU executes. Another important one here is .data, and this section contains all of the initialized global and static variables. And then you'll notice it copies a ton of additional sections. Now, once these sections are copied, it performs some memory relocations, and this just ensures that the memory locations actually match the locations where the image is loaded in memory. And then it processes the import table, which essentially contain references to external functions from the modules that the program requires. And then scrolling down here a little further, you'll find that one of the final steps that it performs is execute the program's entry point. And by doing so, we have loaded our message box application entirely in memory. Now, this entire process that we discussed is, again, at a very high level, because understanding how this all happens and how memory relocation works is just out of scope of this video. It's a very advanced territory that takes a long time to master, but understanding this high level overview is what is important. And through those 5 steps that we have discussed is how the sideload command works. Now, as for using the sideload command, we simply use a sideload. We can provide it several different options, which we'll get into shortly, and then the file path to the DLL or exe. Now, it's a bit contradictory to say that it can execute an exe considering its about section describes as the command only being capable of executing a shared library, but rest assured it can also execute a standard exe. I just don't think the help menu was updated to reflect this capability. Now, when you are executing a DLL, you will need to specify its entry point, so the entry point of the executing tool's capabilities, and then you can also apply several additional command line switches, such as parent process ID spoofing, the actual process that it injects to, any arguments of the hosting process, and then several additional command line switches that I recommend you explore in your own time. Now, to observe how the sideload command works when executed from a Sliver's interface, to demonstrate it, I'm going to use Mimikatz. And we will get into Mimikatz later in this course, but currently I just want to showcase you how the sideload command behaves. Now, you can compile this if you wish to. Just remember to install that workload we mentioned earlier, but you can also download its pre-compiled version as well. So by going into the releases here, I'm going to download the asset called Mimikatz trunk using the zip extension. And then once the file has downloaded, I'm going to use the unzip command with the dswitch. And what the dswitch will specify is the directory where we are extracting the contents to. So I'm just going to use tools here and specify a directory of Mimikatz, and then naturally the archive itself. Once executed here, you'll see that the contents extract, and the main file that we are after is the mimikatz.exe executable. Perfect. So within our Sliver session, we can use the sideload command and then specify the location to our executable. And then anything that comes after it is the command line arguments that we pass to it. So for basic illustration, I am going to use the coffee argument and then the exit argument following that to make sure that the Mimikatz process terminates correctly. And this is only applicable really to Mimikatz because it spawns an interactive session, and to terminate that interactive session, we have to exit from it. And the exit argument takes care of that. And as far as for the coffee argument, all that it does is simply print an ASCII art of basically a coffee mug. And once executed here, you'll see that we get some nice little artwork of a freshly brewed coffee. Now, although the coffee argument serves as an example, the same process would apply for any other useful Mimikatz functionality, or any other tools functionality for that matter. So for instance, if we were to specify token elevate to elevate our context to the local system account, and then pass something like LSA dump SAM to dump the local SAM database, you'll see that the arguments we pass simply come after the specification of the tool. Now, because we've not got permissions, you'll see that the command fails. But hopefully this all makes sense. And that concludes our exploration of integrating external tools in Sliver. I hope you found this video informative. We have now explored two methods of executing tools in Sliver, which should provide you with an extensive toolset for your operations. In the next video, we will apply everything we have discussed over the past several videos to enumerate a Windows system, understand our environment, and collect data for subsequent attacks. In the meantime, feel free to join our Discord channel to stay up to date with us, explore our courses, soon to be released labs, and one of the finest red teaming courses available. I've left a link to our group in the description below. Until then, stay safe and I will see you in the next one.